So when I recorded this session, it turns out my microphone was not turned on and there's no sound. So I'm going to do my best to narrate what is going on based on what I'm seeing. So this is the start of the session. Notice how he passed over the two easier ones and went to the target closest to me. So he's going for the one very close to me, and I didn't put it there on purpose. When I was setting up the camera, he actually slid it over towards my chair, and I didn't realize until after I sat down how close it was to me. Because again, trying not to encourage him to share space with me before he's ready. But he's kind of telling me, yeah, I'm ready, it's fine. He's got 3 options, and that's the one he's going for. And you can see he still has some hesitation. He's a little bit slow, a little bit reaching the neck out without stepping fully forward. But he is taking a step towards me, where in the past, if I had tried this, he'd probably keep his feet planted and turn into a giraffe and reach for that if I didn't give him any options. There he went to test out one of the easier ones, and I gave him a cookie, so he knows that that's an option. Yeah. And I think in this part, I'm actually asking him to touch the further ones so that I could move the close one. But did you notice that? Little sniff, little reach out to me. Oh, there he goes, right in my face. And as much as I love that he's reaching out for me, I'm not going to reward that because I want him to be able to be curious without it being a training outcome. So I'm trying to move that over. I moved it over a little and he didn't totally panic. So I actually clicked and treated then to show him, hey, if you can stay with me, that's really awesome. And he retreated to that back target, which is totally fine. And he got his click and his treat there. Okay, so now the close target to me is a little less conflict and closer to his food dish, so we should get a really high rate of reinforcement here. He went for the triple touch because he wants the extra credit. He is so cute, this Rusty. I can't remember what I was cueing him to do here, but this is really interesting. So he walks past the target, comes up to my face, sniffs in my face, which is how horses greet each other, kind of smelling their breath, which is really awesome to see. But then he kind of blew into my face so hard that I kind of snapped backwards, and he didn't get scared. And I really love that. And look he's so curious about me, more so than the targets. And this is exactly why I wanted to do the conflict-free behavior, because it took his mind off of how scary it is to have a human right there, to the point where he's like, well, maybe a human's not that scary, and maybe I can investigate and, do so without someone trying to touch me. So you'll notice when he does that, I'm sitting perfectly still as much as possible. Okay, so there's my I'm going to stand up warning. Telling him I'm going to move around, and I actually didn't end up standing up because I was trying to fix the cone with the target in it. So what I was trying to do with this is I eventually want him to be able to touch a handheld target, but targets moving has been so scary for him, and I'll see if I can splice in a clip from our very failed attempt at that earlier last week. And so I realized that by having the handheld target inside of a cone like that, he controls the movement, and you saw it fell over and he didn't care at all. He didn't even back up. So it just goes to show how much when a horse feels like they have control over the environment, it gives them a lot of confidence. And he kept knocking the cone over, so I decided to get a heavier cone base. Although in hindsight, knocking over the cone may have been very good for him. I thought this clip was really interesting because I told him, here's my signal for I'm going to stand up. Normally he kind of flies backwards, and he stayed with me. He stepped a little bit over, but watch this. He's touching the target because it brings him comfort now. So instead of flying back into his stall back there, he kind of stayed with me and kept his nose on the target. And I wanted to include this clip because I think he starts to really think towards me, which is a weird thing to say. But do you notice how he's looking at me more, leaning towards me more, lingering on me more? And think about when you have to deal with a scary thing and you're like, I don't even want to look at it. I just want to look at the target. I just want to look at the treat thing. And he's actually really like thinking about the fact that there is a human sitting next to him and it's really not that bad. Yeah, and you see that extra touch point where he sniffed towards me. So I decided to go out on a limb and see if he'd hand feed. Now, in the past, I have hand fed him, but what he usually does is stand way back, stretch his neck out like a giraffe, knock the treats out of my hand, and then eat them off the ground. So you can see how much his comfort level has changed by allowing him to have a really relaxed session. And he continues to explore me in between asks, which is great. Did you see how long his muzzle lingered on my hand? That is also very new for him. He's, a snatch and grab sort of guy. And you can really tell the comfort level changing. Not perfect. He's definitely still stretching his neck. But he's also not positioned his legs in the flying backwards sort of position that he usually does when he is super stressed out. In fact, he kind of pointed a back leg a little bit there for a moment, which can be a sign of relaxation. Stepping towards me, look, he's sniffing me. And again, he blew in my face and scared me. But he didn't react when I yanked my head away because he breathed in my eyeball, which is great. This is awesome. And I think what I was trying to teach at this point was cue control on touching the target versus touching the cone that you can barely see behind me. Yeah, that's a nice long linger for him. It's these little signs that show you he's more comfortable. See how his legs are out like that? That's that's his I'm ready to fly backwards position, but that's okay because he decided to be curious about me, and I love that. And eventually he'll be curious and feel safe enough around me that he doesn't feel like he needs to be positioned in such a way that he can escape really fast. Yeah, those legs outstretched. And that time I kind of leaned towards him, which I had been avoiding, but it's kind of a catch-22. Do you want to go into his space to deliver the treats or ask him to come into my space to receive the treats? And since we're trying to create low or no conflict behaviors, it depends on the horse and the situation and the moment. All right, so at this point, I'm starting to wonder if he thinks sniffing my face is part of the behavior, because he did it in between behaviors a couple of times. So just like he was going to 3 different cones, he might think, okay, I touch the target, I sniff her face, I touch the cone, I get the treat. And so I love that he's doing that, but I also don't want it to be a part of the behavior chain. So I think what I was doing is trying to cut that part out by cueing the behavior sooner, so that he didn't feel like that was a necessary part of the behavior. And then if he still wants to come and explore me, he certainly can. And that's when I decided he was in a really good position to work on a little bit of touch. He's very relaxed right now. Look at his back legs. He's not in a flight position. He's not stepping back in between each loop. And so his engagement level right now is perfect. It's really, he's curious and low stress. And so I decided to go a little bit faster than I normally would in this scenario because he was basically saying, I'm ready. All right, and so now I'm basically doing if you followed my training on Blue, this is how it started with touch for her of, I'm going to hold my hand up and you put your face in my hand, and then progress from there little by little. So, building a little bit of duration, and he seemed to have that nice, curious engagement. And again, look how relaxed his back legs are, even though he's stretching his neck a little bit. I think at some point that's just part of how he interacts with humans, and we can shape that behavior down the road to get him to just stand even closer once he's comfortable. And so he picked up on that fast, and very important, I wanted to know that he can still get a click for the targets, but he didn't actually touch them then. He just kind of thought about, basically, the targets are going to be the easy button here. So if this is too much for him, he touches a target, he gets a cookie. And a lot of times they'll look at the easy button or even graze over the easy button and then still choose to do the hard thing. I am also using what's called a start button here. So I'm letting him control when I show him my hand. So the more control they feel over the situation, the more calm they're going to be. So he's touching the cone to say, okay, I'm ready for pets. And then I'm putting up my hand, and then he's sticking his face in my hand. And notice how he stuck his muzzle further down my arm that time, which makes me think, maybe he's saying, an invitation to pet higher up on his face. Yeah, that was very good. And notice how he's not stopping his chewing, for the most part, and this is great. This is such great engagement from him, and I'm so proud of his progress. And there's no hesitation between loops. He's going straight for that cone to say, yeah, give me more. And this is what starting with that conflict-free behavior does. It gets them to feel like you're not going to put them in over their head. You're going to make sure that they have full control over the situation. And you're going to go at their speed. And here I choose to step up the criteria. Notice me wiggling my fingers as he comes towards me. This may seem like nothing, but this is actually huge for him. And he did not show any more hesitation or latency. He didn't stop chewing. In fact, he stepped forward. Look at his back feet right now. This is an extremely relaxed position for him to be in. More forward. Look at, he's coming right up. He's getting so comfortable, and I just love it. And he's letting me pet higher on his face. Okay, so there was a little processing time there, and then a little tiny spook when he touched the cone. I think what was going on was there was some noise in the background. I think a FedEx truck came by and was delivering things, so that being such a tiny reaction is really great for him. And bouncing right back from it. Oh, see the little finger wiggle on his face, and he's still like, that's totally cool. And I know you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just pet him? I know that would be too much for him. There we go, a little finger pet, a little scratch. Okay, and here I am giving the I'm gonna get up signal, which he's like, oh, am I touching it? And then he kind of remembers, oh, that's the two hands in the air is that I'm standing up. But still, it was not an explosive reaction. He's waiting for his cookies. I'm giving him his jackpot to end the session because he was an extremely good boy.